This is Talk Back. Today is September 9th. We're almost 6 months into the pandemic, and we have so many disappointing things. We're worried about our health. We're worried about the elections. We're worried about racial justice. But almost just as important is the fact that we are bereft of live theater. Broadway is dark, our regional theaters are dark, and we're unable to have that wonderful communication between the audience live and the people on stage. So, what do we do to make up for it during this time? Well, we have two guests who are thinking about theater, musicals especially, Broadway and movie. They're making their lists, they're thinking about it, and they're listening if they can't be watching. So let's have some fun today. What is your favorite Broadway musical? What is your favorite movie musical? Let's introduce Lisa Foss, who is the president of the board of the Chestnut Street Playhouse in Norwich, Connecticut. Hi, Lisa. Good to see you today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, and we'll talk about your background in theater, your talents, and your experiences. And my granddaughter, Carly from Boston, who has been in regional children's theater since the age of 8 at the Riverside Theater in Hyde Park in Massachusetts. One of her great roles was Adelaide in Guys and Dolls, and she's now taking singing lessons. And her mother, my daughter, is a music therapist. And Carly will tell you that my children grew up on Gershwin and show music, as well as the music of the 70s and 80s as they were growing up. And I made sure that they knew what musical theater was, and Broadway was very important. So, Lisa, let's start with you. Tell us something about your background, why you love theater, what your talents are, and what you're doing now.
Well, taking it way back, I was a super shy child. I loved doing dance. I discovered dance. I started when I was 3 years old, but it wasn't until 5th grade when I was cast as Peter Pan in Peter Pan, and it just totally changed my entire world. I don't think I was ever out of a show since that time. So I went to Carnegie Mellon for musical theater. I have my BFA in musical theater from that fantastic school. I lived in New York for a time, and I worked on Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines as a singer, perform locally when I can. As soon as I became a mother, my focus really became on staying in Connecticut near family, but I always needed an artistic home. And that's when I discovered what used to be the Spirit of Broadway Theater and is now the Chestnut Street Playhouse, a small, intimate, 69-seat, beautiful theater in Norwich that is truly like a second home to me. And I am missing it. You mentioned, everything is dark. I'm missing it so much. But proud to keep doing theater. It's what I love best. It's where I've met my best friends. And it's just a lifelong passion. My job that pays me is working for Wesleyan University. I run a program called the Center for Creative Youth that is an arts immersion program that unfortunately was on hiatus this summer, but is a 44-year-old program that has students from all over the world studying creative writing, music, visual arts, theater, and musical theater. So art is central to my life, and I can't imagine not being an artist.
Okay, great. Let's turn to Carly now. Carly, you're going to be 16 years old on November 3rd, Election Day, which is a fantastic day. Right? You were born November 3rd in 2004 when we had another presidential election during that time. So tell us about your interest in Broadway musicals, musical theater, and movie musicals.
Well, I don't have quite as an impressive history with theater, but I've always liked theater since I was really little. I remember years ago, I was probably like 4, 5, or 6, watching Sound of Music and Hairspray and The King and I with you, like at the beach. And I don't know, I feel like it's a big part of my growing up. I started doing kids theater, children's theater when I was 7 or 8. And I don't know, I don't have any like roles behind me and or big roles. I haven't sung on a cruise. I mean, I'm only 16, but I just think it's a lot of fun and means a lot to me. It's has sentimental value to me, a lot of shows, and yeah, it's just one of my passions.
So tell me, this summer,
Mhm.
this summer, you and your mother did a program for yourselves to collect and watch so many things. What did you do this summer?
Oh yeah, we did a movie musical marathon. So we made a list of just about every movie musical that we could think of, and we started watching them or rewatching them on TV, and we watched 20 to 30 of them over the course of the summer. So yeah, that was really fun.
It sounds great. So you miss going to Broadway, right? That's something that you like to do.
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
Broadway is a lot of fun. I do miss that. I mean, I hadn't even seen a Broadway musical until a few years ago, but I have to say that it is like the most amazing experience. I mean, I don't know why everyone doesn't go watch Broadway. Like, so much better than movies. I love Broadway music more than pop music. It's so good. It's like an all-around experience. There's dance, there's music, there's lights.
You created a Spotify playlist that you let me use too, that has all the Broadway songs in them. Isn't that so?
Well, I mean, obviously it doesn't have all of them. It has highlights, about 14 hours of highlights, but
Wow.
that's the best I
Yeah.
can do.
Okay, Lisa, let's get back to you. The importance of live theater and of Broadway musicals. Separate from drama, which also has its power, the catharsis, the putting yourself in the shoes of the other characters in the show. What is there special about the Broadway musical?
Well, you were mentioning like you're listening to the shows even though you can't go see them right now. I listen to Broadway soundtracks. I have Sirius XM radio, which is wonderful, by the way, because it's a constant discovery of new music and shows from modern day all the way back to the super early days when the art form was just being created. So it's kind of a great educator. I listen to that nonstop. But I love listening to a Broadway soundtrack. There's kind of a comfort and a familiarity with it also, like you're being taken on a journey. You can start with the story, and it just takes you all the way through, and I find such comfort in that. I've been listening to some of the shows that I've seen, like later on we're going to mention our list, but The Band's Visit is a show that made my list, and that's a soundtrack that I just love to listen to. It wasn't everybody's cup of tea on Broadway, but it was something so unique and very different that you hadn't really seen before, both in the way that the story is told, the simplicity of the story, and the style of music, with the musicians, many of them on stage playing live this tremendous music. And I just love listening to that. I went to see that show with my Aunt Marcia. She was high school friends with one of the producers. So we were able to go and see that, and just a special memory. So every time I listen to that soundtrack, I'm taken back to this wonderful day that we had. And I think that's true with a lot of shows that either I've been blessed to be a part of, or that I saw, or that I directed with a cast, or something that like Waitress I can listen to on a loop and never get tired of it. And it's the best one for like doing a walk. Like all the music is so great. And it's an emotional response. It's not just, your jam. You're like taken on a whole journey when you listen to a soundtrack from a great musical.
Right. So before we get into our list, Lisa, why don't you use your expertise to give us a little history of musical theater, Broadway musicals, because right now, so many of them are involved in big storylines that have a real arc, a real plot. And when they first started out many years ago, probably 100 years ago, there was more movement toward one number and the other, and some of the plots were silly or non-existent. Can you just give us a little bit of the history of the movement of musical theater to more of a story-driven musical?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the history goes back to the early days of performing in vaudeville. And one of the other shows that makes my list is Oklahoma. Rodgers and Hammerstein was revolutionary in the fact that the songs all of a sudden continued the storyline. A lot of the older shows would be like, oh, we're telling a story and now we're going to sing a beautiful song, and you know, kind of like a vaudeville variety show would be. But that was really where the songs propelled the story and took it to the next level rather than stopped it. And so that's why it's really quite a revolutionary musical. There were a lot of early artists who wrote songs that were popular, like the songs that were on Broadway were popular on the radio. That was like the popular music. And that was true for a long time. There's a great show called Promises, Promises that was like a one-hit wonder for them writing as a musical team. But so many of the songs from that show are still, you know, super popular hits. Modern musicals, I think, you know, they're really thinking out of the box, different ways to tell a story, different plot lines, different representation of you know, what our community looks like and the stories that are important to tell. And I think it's an exciting time. And you know, Carly had mentioned, you know, there's nothing like seeing a Broadway show or seeing something live. It's not like you're watching a movie. And that's one of the things that's so special and why this pandemic is so devastating is, you know, in my curtain speech, I would say, you know, there's nothing like being in a room full of people with a shared experience. Everybody's experiencing it together in real time. And no matter what the story is, you're swept away and really paying attention with all of your senses. You're seeing and hearing and, you know, experiencing the room that you are in to you know, to experience these wonderful stories, whether it's a spectacle like Phantom of the Opera with the chandelier and all the shenanigans, or it's a simple musical that tells a story in a different way, like Fun Home, where you know, it was a graphic novel now made into a musical that tells a story at different points in time. And I just find it so creative and magical. Magical is the word. It's just the creativity knows no bounds. And you're, you know, Hades Town, which is a story, you know, based on Greek mythology with Orpheus and Eurydice. And yet here they tell it with folk music, with a little bit of Dixieland and a chorus that becomes many different characters, and with, you know, a tremendous, you know, diverse cast of, you know, some of the best talent you've ever seen on the stage. And
Okay.
it's
Great.
Yeah, it's
Great.
an exciting time for artists, and hopefully we'll pick up where we left off.
Okay. So Carly, let me just ask you, when you're listening to a musical or watching it, what are the ingredients that make for a great Broadway show, in your opinion? Then we'll get into your lists and Lisa's lists.
Oh, that's a really hard question. I mean, I feel like it's so many things. There are some musicals that sound similar, but one of them is like really good and the other one just isn't. Like there's something that like is in the music that just makes you like happy, makes you feel emotions. Not necessarily happy, and that is what makes it really good. Is when a musical just makes you feel things and you feel like you're being like brought along like on a journey. I know that was said. And well, that's when you're listening. Then there's also, you know, obviously some musicals, when you see them live, have like dancing, and they have, you know, really cool sets and things like that can really make a super cool experience, and just help you feel like you're part of the story. And I think that's what's really great about musicals.
Okay. So let's turn to your lists. We have them in order, and I'm going to put up a slideshow where I organized your favorites for each of you. Okay, let me turn to that. And we're going to do Lisa first. The first category, can you see that on the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so the first category are the top 5 musical comedies. And Lisa, your top number 1 comedy was Book of Mormon, right? Why is that number 1?
It was so irreverent, and again, very different than anything else that you had seen on Broadway, with authors who, or, you know, not the musical authors, but the, you know, with the South Park authors who brought this crazy show to the Broadway stage. But the music is so fabulous in this show. Not only is it funny, but every song you hear, you're like, this feels like it's been part of the American musical theater lexicon forever. Like it's instantly hummable, singable, tune-filled. And some really heartfelt moments in this show too. As much as it's, oh my gosh, your jaw drops to the floor with some of the stuff that they get away with. There's a lot of the basic sweetness at the core of the story. There's been controversy because it's making fun of culture, it's making fun of religion. It's like, have you seen South Park? Like that's what they do. So if you go to the show and you don't know what you're in for, you might be a little, oh, clutch my pearls.
Right.
But if you know what you're
Exactly.
getting into, you're taking on, I think, kind of an unexpected ride. And it's just, I just find it hilarious and a great show.
Well, you'll see we have some great unanimity here. I love that show also, and you're right. Despite the unorthodoxness of the making fun of the Mormons and every other religion, probably some of the language, it still is a true Broadway show in the breadth of its music and choreography. It really is almost an old-fashioned Broadway show that I love, despite all the other things. So let's go on. That was your number one, Book of Mormon. Your number two was Avenue Q.
Yeah, and again,
that show is still playing.
And actually the same collaborators too with the music. So, right. I mean, but again, it was with puppets. So this was irreverent. And then Book of Mormon was like irreverent 2.0. But this was, again, so original. And the way that they did the puppetry, it wasn't like you couldn't see the puppeteer. You could see the puppeteer, and that was fantastic. And like the puppeteer almost disappeared because you really paid attention to what they were doing with their fully fledged characters as puppets. And also great music across the board.
Right. All right. And your number three show is The Producers.
Yep. Taking it back again. Another show. Like who else but Mel Brooks is going to get away with a song called Springtime for Hitler?
Right.
You know? And so you watch it and you're like this, but you're also rolling on the floor because it's so funny. And that was a big Broadway spectacle at the time, just with the sets and the costumes and the humor and the star power. And again, some really great music. Not enough female parts, but great music.
Yeah. I hate to do this to you guys. We're having a wonderful time, and I want to continue this, but I'm hearing some feedback in one of our internets. I would love and I know it's hard to start again, but I want the show to be just right, and I want everybody to hear everything clearly. So I'm going to ask the studio to abort the show now, to stop it, so we can find out the issue of the service and the hearing, the audio and the sound, so we can start again. Okay, I hope you don't mind, but I want to do it right. And in these technical times, and we have these issues, we want to get it right. Okay.
So Sheila, are we going to reschedule for another time?
No, we're going to do it now. Well, let's see if we can. Well, let's see if we're off. Ellen, can you take us off?
She just wrote in the chat to keep going. So
what?
She just wrote in the chat to keep going.
Oh.
I don't want to. I don't want